I'm going to redo my overview here for Final Fantasy VI Brave New World, as I felt like my previous video didn't really go into justice of... didn't do it justice, and go into some of the more intricate changes that I think really make things a lot better. So let's see, where should we start? Let's go back to equipment here. So one of the big changes for equipment is gone. Well, I guess you could see from the UI here, they stuck relics on the same page as weapons and armor, so that's really nice. And if we press Y here, we can see right here some of the effects that these weapons have. And obviously here's some new armor, new weapons are redone. So it makes it a lot easier. There's a couple of really nice quality of life things right there. And pretty much all the items, except for maybe some of the bit more basic starting ones, have been redone, and the gameplay changes are just absolutely fantastic. They did a great job. Another change is gone is the Gauntlet and the Genji Glove. So the Gauntlet for double handing, the Genji Glove for dual wielding. Instead, these abilities are just built into weapons. So for example, here's a dagger on lock. All daggers are dual wieldable, just by default. And dual wielding, just keep in mind that I believe it drops the weapon damage down to 75% per weapon, so you're getting 150% combined, but not 200% combined, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, so all daggers are dual wieldable. Let's go ahead and remove that. Not that one, but some swords are dual wieldable. So for example, if we put, let's just say the Blood Sword in this hand, for lock he can't equip the Excalibur right now, or the Excalibur right now, but he can still equip the daggers, the wing edge, the scimitar. You can see it's got dual wield built in there. It also has counterattack built in. The black belt is still in the game, so even if you don't have counterattacking through a weapon, you can still get it through an accessory. Let's see what's next on the list. I guess we could talk about espers. Oh no, let's talk about double hands real quick. So there's a couple of weapons with double handing built inside of it. I know one is Cyan's samurai swords or knives or whatever they're called. A weapon is being double-handed when it's gold like that, so, well, I can't really... Cyan can't equip shields, so he's probably not the best example of when something's not being double-handed, but Shadow, as you can see now, he's double-handing this samurai sword or knife, whatever it's called, and now he's not. So you can tell when something's gold, it's being double-handed. When it's not gold, it's not. Shadow can now equip Cyan's knives, which this is a very fun build, by the way. So this dagger is unique to Shadow. It allows him to attack twice, and then that's a funny example, but so yeah, you can see Cyan has some of his weapons that automatically counterattack, but I guess I don't have the example in front of me, but this weapon, as do a couple of Cyans, will randomly cast arrow on all enemies. This is a really fun build for Shadow. I recommend it, but I guess I'm getting off the topic here. So dual hand, dual wield built in some of the weapons. I think spears have dual hand built inside of it. So let's go to Edgar here. Yeah, see, we'll remove that. So now he's double-handing his spear. And that's a nice little attribute to have, huh? So, yeah, Genji Glove and Gauntlet built inside of some of the weapons. And a lot of the weapons have a lot more interesting stats built into them. Let's talk next about espers. So espers are very, very different. So you can see we have a level and an esper level. Esper levels are leveled up individually by the person, so it's not like the esper gains levels. The person gains esper levels, or the character. And leveling up is a little bit different as far as espers. Actually, it's a lot different. Everything about espers is different. Take everything you knew about espers from Final Fantasy VI and throw it out the window, because it's been vastly improved. So let's use Terra as an example here. Let's use Madwin. So now we can arrow down to the EL bonus. And the way it works is at the end of every battle, your character gains both EXP and Esper level EXP, and whenever the Esper level increases, you get an unspent EL point, which you can then spend in the Esper itself to gain whatever bonus you want. So you can see here we get a +1 to magic and stamina bonus from Madwin. We do not need to have Madwin equipped in order to use it. That's kind of the idea behind this. Back in regular Final Fantasy VI, whenever you leveled up, you would get the Esper level bonus if it was equipped at the time of leveling up, which made things really cumbersome because you had to keep track of characters when they were leveling up, and could be overpowered in some aspects, and that has been redone to this Esper level sort of system, which is a million times better. It's fantastic. With that said, Espers are a lot more limited. I know Kefka's Tower is not the best example of this, but here you can kind of see lightened color is an Esper that somebody else has equipped. I think Terra has Ragnarok right now equipped. Grayed out is just flat out not equipable. So Starlit is not equipable from Terra. Terra can't get the Esper bonus, the passive Esper bonus, which, by the way, now there's passive Esper bonuses. I don't think there was one in regular Final Fantasy VI, but each Esper has its own unique passive Esper bonus that you get just from equipping it. And yeah, you can have it. They're great. But Terra can't get Starlit, for example, so she can't get a passive Esper bonus. She can't get any of these spells from this Esper, maybe from a different Esper, and can't get the +2 stamina bonus from Starlit, maybe from others. Also, let's talk about SP real quick. So SP caps at 50. The way learning spells works in Brave New World is you get SP points at the end of a battle, and then you can spend it however you want by arrowing down to the spell and just spending it. These have checkboxes. I'm in Kefka's Tower, of course I've gotten every spell. But it maxes at 30, and then you can spend the SP points and you get them back again for different spells. I don't think any spell costs more than 30 SP. Well, I shouldn't say I don't think. I can guarantee you no spells cost more than 30 SP because you can't get it that way. But it's just another fun little addition. I like it, it's cute, and it's better than the percentage-based learning of spells, I believe, from regular Final Fantasy VI. So, one final thing to note is, obviously, because you can't, every character can't equip every Esper, characters can't learn all the spells anymore. So Terra still is a great healer. Oh, and just to back up a bit, so characters can't learn all the spells, which gives them more defined roles. So, Terra is actually one of the... Terra has fewer changes than some of the other characters, so this might not be the best example, but Terra still learns a bunch of white magic, making her a great healer. There's no re-raise on Terra. There's regen, and regen X, I'm pretty sure, is new to Brave New World. I don't think outside of using an Esper in battle, you could actually cast regen on everyone. She still has great elemental coverage, ice, fire, lightning. Break no longer petrifies, instead it's wind damage and, well, ignores magic defense. Whoa, bounced around fast. Oh, did I speed it up? Nuts. That must have been annoying, as far as the music. Storm no longer hits allies, is no longer percent damage. I think it was Whirlwind originally, and it's now 2 elements. So Terra has fantastic elemental coverage. I think she just doesn't do Holy, or Poison element is now Dark element. And here's a great non-elemental magic attack. Let's contrast her with Celeste real quick. So let's go to Celeste and look at some of her spells. So she doesn't gain Life 2, and she doesn't gain Cure 3, although she doesn't really need it. But she does get Re-Raise. She doesn't get Regen X. She gets Ice 3 and Bolt 3, but not Fire 3. She does get Holy. And Murton is Fire and Dark, which I think was Meltdown in some of the newer translations, but it's Murton in the correct translation. She gets Quater. So yeah, just to kind of contrast Terra and Celeste, they're no longer basically the same character with just Morph or Runic, which Morph was redone in this game, but I guess I'll come back to that. I'm going to do a second video going more into the characters. I'm just going to keep this video as more of an overview. With that said, with a lot of these changes, one could argue that the game is not as easy as it used to be. You know, you could say, oh, the game's more difficult, but honestly, Final Fantasy VI was just easy, and so the game is now normal, I would say, in difficulty. So I've played through this game twice, beaten everything twice, and my first playthrough I got probably like 6 or 7 game overs. My second playthrough, I think I got only 1 or 2 game overs until Kefka. Then I got a bunch of game overs before I finally did beat Kefka my second playthrough. My second playthrough was on 2.0. My first playthrough was on like 1.9, I want to say. So, yeah, the game is no longer as ridiculously easy as Final Fantasy VI was, I believe, due to several characters being just amazingly overpowered. Terra, Sabin, for example. And I will say this, Cyan is a lot better in this game. In fact, he might be better in this game than any other game Cyan is in. So Cyan fans such as myself rejoice. Cyan has been buffed by quite a bit. But anyways, back on the topic here. I would say it's definitely not a hard mod, but your characters there aren't as many just super powerful characters as there was in regular Final Fantasy VI. So there will be more of a challenge, and with the spell system being what it is, the characters will be more unique, and building a party will be more tactful than it used to be. So here's Locke as kind of an example. Good healing, and yeah, no safe, no shell, which are much more useful in this game, by the way. You will be using safe and shell a lot more. No float for Locke, things like that. So you'll need at least somebody who can cast float. Terra, I don't think, has float. She has slow, which is very good in this game. She does not have float, but Celeste I know has float. Yeah, Celeste has float. So, yeah, just depending on what bosses you're fighting and stuff like that, you'll want to have somebody who has float. Let's get another example. I'm going to do one more example here of characters and spells. Let's take a look at Sabin. So Sabin's magic. He gets Quake, which is a little random. Drain, but that's it. He has no healing spells. Mantra heals a lot better than it did, by the way, in regular Final Fantasy VI. It's now based more on his stamina and less on the amount of HP he has, so at least there's that. But he has float, safe slow. He has Golem. Golem's an amazing expert to have in this game. It's really, really good. And he's super tanky now. So I just wanted to go over that. Realm has, she's kind of a weird one. She has Cure 3, no life spells, but Re-Raise. So she's like a good healer. And then she has Meteor and Flare, which are both very powerful, and I think they both ignore defense? Non-elemental damage. This one doesn't say this. But she also has Osmos. MP management is a huge thing in this game. Only 2 or 3 characters get Osmos, with Realm being one of them. Terra and Celeste, for example, do not get Osmos, so you will need to restore their MP in this game. You will need to find other ways. So items will do it. There's a couple of newer skills that will do it, now that Terra especially does not have a natural way of restoring her MP, and her spells can be quite powerful and expensive. So, something to keep in mind. By the way, Sabin is fantastic now for restoring MP, but I'll come back to that. I think here I'm actually using Gogo to restore her MP, but let's see, what else is on the list? Blind or Darkness, whatever it's called, is more effective, and now affects skills. So Sabin's Blitzes can miss, Cyan's Sword Tex or Bushido can miss if he's blinded. Let me just check Setzer here real quick so I can't go into it, but yeah, enemy abilities can miss if they're physical based as well. So, and obviously the evasion bug was fixed for, I think it was physical evasion would use your magic evasion stat instead of physical evasion, which is why Blind or Darkness didn't really do anything in regular Final Fantasy VI. Poison, I haven't read anywhere to confirm this, but I feel like poison in battle just gets stronger if you leave it, or deals more and more damage the longer it's been on your characters. So that's a thing. Some bosses can be poisoned. Sap is a thing in this game, so the poison spell was replaced with sap, Let me go to Setzer here. I think he has them. And then the bio spell was replaced with poison. Yeah, so sap sets sap, and poison sets poison. I want to say they both have a 100% chance of doing that. But, so keep that in mind. They are separate debuffs, and so they can be combined. Sap works on pretty much everything, including bosses. Poison works on most things, not all bosses. Let's see what else we're going to talk about. Imp. Imp's a little bit different. Imp no longer makes your characters unable to do any actions except cast the Imp spell and attack. Now it just halves all damage and all healing done by the character, and I think it makes them take more damage too. I don't remember off the top of my head, but you can use it on a lot more enemies. In fact, I used it on Vargas's bears. You can actually imp them, and it makes them makes the fight a lot more tolerable. Scan was slightly redone. Scan now uses 1 MP. I don't remember if it always did. That's a great description right there. But Scan no longer uses the ATB gauge, so your character can act again right after it. And the idea with that is the game wants you to use Scan a lot in this game. Regular enemies have newer or different elemental weaknesses, and they're designed to make a lot more sense. So, for example, pretty much all machines are weak to water or lightning, or both. Pretty much all human-type enemies are weak to darkness, things like that. And so scanning it is really good to use, and you can tell what buffs and debuffs, by the way, are on enemies, including the bosses, when you use Scan. So if bosses buff themselves, you can tell if they have regen again or haste again by scanning them, and you can tell if they still have slow on them or sap, things like that. And by the way, I believe regen overrides sap and sap overrides regen, kind of like how haste and slow override each other. So something to keep in mind. Defend, row, and swapping weapons in the middle of battle now uses half an ATB gauge, so that allows that to be more useful. Speaking of row, there are quite a few bosses who will swap whatever row your character is in as kind of a counterattack, so that is important to consider. Sabin's blitzes no longer ignore rows. In fact, most abilities no longer ignore rows. Cyan's Bushidos no longer ignore rows, except for maybe like 1 or 2. I think Dispatch still ignores a row. So rows are more important. And covering has kind of been redone. So the True Knight relic, if anybody even remembers that from Final Fantasy VI, it was used so little, is kind of gone now. But there are other ways to kind of cover allies and enemies when you're in the front row, you have a chance of covering your ally in the back row. I don't believe front row can cover front row, and I don't believe back row can cover back row. I believe only front row can cover back row, and it's a much, much higher, if not 100% chance to cover an ally if the ally is in critical damage. So tanking is more of a thing in this game, which is pretty cool. Let's see, what else do I have on my list? Stats of weapons and armor. Oh, well, I don't know if I want to go and show an example of this, but you can view the stats of weapons and armors at shops before you make the purchase with the Y button, so that's a pretty nice quality of life improvement. The undead enemies are no longer killed in one shot by a Phoenix Down or the life spell. Instead, but they can still be damaged by cure. But instead, if you completely drain them of their mana, then they die. So I think the idea with that is magic is keeping them alive because they're undead, and using Rasp or Osmos. Well, I wouldn't use Osmos because that will, if they're undead, it'll restore them instead of draining from them. But Rasp can kill them. Other things that drain MP can kill them. So that's something to keep in mind. And then finally, one last thing that has been dramatically improved is elemental weapons, or weapons that proc spells. So most notably in Raj, let's see, I don't think Gogo, oh, he does. Alright, so this one may cast Doom, MP crit. So, rods kind of have multiple effects built in one, so this may not have been the best segue. But there are several weapons. Let's go to swords real quick. Not you, Gogo. Swords can randomly cast spells. These don't use MP when they cast them. Let's go to Excalibur here. So Excalibur, as you can see, uses MP for critical hits. So what that does is it will crit pretty much 100% of the time, if not 100% of the time, and then take off some MP to do that. If your character is out of MP, then it stops using MP for crits. I think, let's see, Terra's Apocalypse I think does that. Yeah. So that's another way that weapons, particularly swords and rods, have been made more interesting. And then, yeah, this one casts Osmos sometimes. And then rods will cast certain spells. Punisher can cast Dark. Dark is a very powerful spell. I'm just going to leave it at that. May cast Bolt 2, Ice 2, Fire 2. So you can use rod users now as physical attackers. That's kind of cool. But keep in mind, if you keep them in the back row, then I'm pretty darn sure that damage gets reduced. So pretty much all the rods have a chance to cast Bolt, some sort of spell. And I will say, using the Fire Rod, Thunder Rod, and Ice Rod, that Bolt 2 hits really, really hard. Same with Ice 2 and Fire 2. Like, I want to say, when I was in the World of Balance, when you fight the Imperial Air Force on your first time going to the floating continent, I had Mog using one of these rods, using a Thunder Rod, and that Bolt 2 was hitting for like 2,000 damage. It was hitting really, really hard. So keep that in mind. And then Mog has a lot of changes. I'll go over that in another video. And I'm just going to wrap it up there. I mean, there's many more changes. Really, playing Final Fantasy VI Brave New World feels like you're playing Final Fantasy VI for the first time again. There's so much more things to discover. The story has been kept the same. The dialogue has, I'm just going to say, stayed up. It's had some changes, but not to the point where it's going to bother you. It's been improved. Kefka still has all his great lines. There's some more cursing. There was a lot more cursing before Brave New World 2.0. 2.0 seems to have toned it down a bit, so if cursing bothers you, then have no fear. It's been toned down quite a bit, especially Realm. She cursed a lot prior to 2.0. But anyways, I think all Final Fantasy VI fans will have a great time playing Brave New World. Link to download it and install it will be in the description. I'm just going to link to the forums. And if you've never played Final Fantasy VI, you'll probably have more trouble playing Brave New World than you would regular Final Fantasy VI, just due to the fact that they took out a lot of the overpowered things in it. But if you have played Final Fantasy VI, you will absolutely enjoy Brave New World. It's very, very well done. They've done so many great changes to it, especially here in 2.0. I cannot recommend it enough to all Final Fantasy VI fans, and I will leave it at that. I hope to make a second video soon, going into more depth of some of the characters and some of the changes. Have a good one.